Who's the first person? Schools?
Seeing as it's 7:30, I'd like to call this Thursday, March 8, 2018 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Tonight we'll be following the published and posted agenda. We'll be televised by Chelmsford Telemedia and recorded for future viewing, which will be most of you. If anyone else is recording in the audience, please let us know now. Hearing none. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the March 1st minutes?
I did.
No, I didn't.
You did not?
I did.
Oh, you did? You did not? I did. Okay. Well, seeing as we don't have a quorum for the vote, I suggest we wait until next week. All right, moving right along. Presentation discussion of FY19 PEG Access Cable Budget. And tonight's People Doodle with the Executive Director of Chelmsford Telemedia. Oh, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This budget should be a lot like last year's budget. Probably the biggest change, if you see on the second page, is that we're guessing we're going to have a 3% drop in revenue. That's really just a guess based on the marketplace of cord cutting. So we have started to see a decline the last quarter. We get revenue every quarter. One quarter doesn't make a trend, but the trend is out there. So that's really the biggest change, and that would be reflected all the way down the line. We made some adjustments in each category, but the biggest one would be in our capital spending. That's really where that's what we use to do the bulk of the adjusting, because we can just cut back on our capital spending. It's not operational. That's basically it, unless there's something in here that you see. We had obviously a slight increase in salary just based on the normal pay raises.
So I guess, now that you're starting to see quarters coming in and you're seeing that drop with the cable cutting,
Yeah,
that's going to be concerning at least a little
it
bit.
is. Yeah, it is. We don't have any idea what will happen.
Yeah, it's just because more and more people are doing it, unfortunately.
Correct.
Well, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Sure.
It's interesting. Something's going to have to change at that higher level about how funding is handled for local access.
That's correct. Yeah, we'll see how fast, how far, and the cable companies have some vested interest in keeping those boxes online, but I don't know if they can change the world either. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Right now, we have a healthy, we're well funded, so we could lose some and still provide the services that we provide now. Then we start to have to look at what we let go, and we'll just see what happens. Yeah. So.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions?
No, I asked all my questions.
Yeah,
when
Elaine
I
asked
said it.
everything. All right, well, thank you, I'll let you.
Well, thank you very much. That was pretty quick, yeah. Moving right along. I don't think we're beating that one, no. We have the presentation discussion of FY19 Department of Public Works Sewer Waste Management Budget. So with us we have Gary Perschetti, the Director of Public Works, and Stephen Yanley, the Assistant Director of Public Works.
How are you tonight?
All right, yourself? Good. Had a busy morning.
Very busy.
And night.
Yep. Okay. Once again, we're level funded, so basically most of the increases you see are salary adjustments that are already negotiated. So.
Okay, the numbers we went over a couple weeks ago, they haven't changed at all?
No.
Okay, good.
No,
So
nothing,
this is it,
nothing
yeah.
changed. So basically, when you're in the admin engineering, most items are the same. There's a couple of small bumps, and that was for computer maintenance. And then we actually bumped supplies up a little. Other than that, it virtually stays the same. There's no changes to it. Public trees, 70,000 is the figure that we're looking for that this year. It's been a rough one, as you can tell, all that's going on. So Highway Division, again, the salaries are basically already committed because it's a association. So basically, that's in there. You'll see that most line items have basically stayed the same. A couple of them have changed slightly, like traffic duty. We actually cut out $2,000. We had a couple of favorable years, so we feel that that will work on that. The next line item, vehicle maintenance, went up slightly, and that's based on the last 2 years of actuals. The big change that you're gonna see is there's a $65,000 line item put back in. That was a catch basin cleaning, which was taken out originally to go into the stormwater, but with that not here.
Still has to get done.
And this year, we're eating that in the budget, so that's been a rough one, but we'll make it through. Diesel fuel, $20,000 drop, and that's basically because of actuals themselves. Very favorable. And then the road materials, it looks like they went down a lot, the more level of what they were, because we had a one-time $27,000 charge that year, so we went back down to 95 on that. And then street signs, which is more like traffic lights, we increased that by 15,000. And as Steve will tell you, that can easily go up by 30,000 because of the
that
age
could-
of what's going on.
We could 10 times that number.
We seem to be chasing a lot these days, trying to keep them going and repair them. And then on the bike trail, you'll see a bump of $10,000. We have a host of areas that are gonna need small sections cut out for the roots that have grown up, and what they've done is move the asphalt, so they have to be taken out so we can bring that back down to the way it is. Other than that, the budget has not moved much at all.
So with that asphalt repair, I mean, the trees aren't going anywhere. It's gonna be something that's gonna have to be continued in a few years again.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we would.
I envision every few years we'll be doing it.
We would anticipate it being another area. You know what I mean? Like,
You always
some will
going
take
along
longer
somewhere,
to
yeah.
come up and do that, so we may end up leaving it there, but at this point, we had ran some numbers and we can get done what we need to for that.
Okay.
Snow and ice, really not much of a change. We just brought it from the 1.3 to 1.385 to 1.4, and basically added that to the equipment repair, because that's been running high pretty much every year.
Now, when we talked a couple weeks ago, we were running well for this year.
I don't have any money.
I didn't think
Money
so.
I told you I have is gone.
Yes, it's
Sorry
gone,
to
yeah.
say.
Pretty much.
We'll be in the negative like everybody else now.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but that's the way it is. Parks Division, which, as you know, is a very small budget. Just a couple of things to note, and that'll do it, is the building maintenance line, which was at 1,800, is down to 400, and that's because we now have a network to Vonnie, so I'm not paying a monthly fee to Comcast
Excellent.
to run the cameras down there. And then he's got a little bit older vehicle, so we bumped him by $500 in that line item. And then grounds maintenance, we basically took the money from up above and put it there because we take care of 7 North Road, the traffic islands, and the common for making sure that they're fertilized as well as being cut. So we needed to add some line items to that. But overall, it's very minimal. Public buildings, again, very little changes to that one. The only bump in it is we switched cleaning companies at the 2 buildings, and although the new company is higher, they are a heck of a lot better. The buildings have been looking better.
Looked really nice when we were there, yeah.
So we're really happy with what's going on there. And once again, vehicle maintenance, that's the pool cars here that we take care of. And, you know, they're slowly getting older, so there's a little more work that's getting done to them, but nothing major. We're carrying the same 30,000 in the old North Town Hall and the Center for the Arts. Basically, that's the usual. We take care of all the building maintenance, which is elevators and fire extinguishers and testing and and all of that. And as you know, the last 2 years, we've cut street lights, and we found out that this $80,000 number is a very comfortable one from the original $200,000 after the change over to LEDs, so I don't see it going up or down at this point. Sewer, sewer's got a bunch of different kind of changes, and a lot of it's got to do with the fact that we did that I&I study, which was carrying a heavy number to it, so we dropped that line item drastically. But what it did tell us is that you'll find in the line item for personnel, there's an increase of 2 entry-level employees, because as part of that, our sewer system, although people think it is new, some part of it is 30 years old now, and we're not doing enough cameraing, and we're not doing enough checking to meet the state minimum, and we need to get that done. So basically, the best thing I could say about this whole budget is, with all the pluses and minuses, the offset still has us lower than we were last year, which means this will be the 3rd year in a row without a increase to the residents.
Mhm.
So we're kind of happy about that.
Great.
And I think that's it, unless you want to do municipal facilities.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because next on our agenda is presentation discussion of FY19 Public Facilities Budget.
Okay.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure you can, anything.
When we were, I don't even know how long ago that was. It seems like it was a long time ago. You had,
A lot's happened since then.
I'm sure it has. There was a question about the truck that was damaged and whether the claim would be totaled or with the insurance company.
Actually, we had a large discussion about that today because we still have not heard from the insurance company.
Really?
Yeah,
They're that backlogged?
Yes.
surprising.
It's
Jeez.
the not this storm, the previous one, the bad icing. We had 3 trucks in accidents, 2 of them
One on my street.
cracked poles in half. None of those sustained any damage. And then the 3rd one hit a tree and is totaled. That was the truck that we were expecting to get on this year's capital, which was pulled. So what we had talked about when we were in our meeting with finances, I had told them we're hoping to get some money back from the insurance, because even though it's an old truck, 18 years, it's still insured because of the size of it. And then we thought we might be able to come and get some money from your 200,000 to replace it, but the insurance is really running slow, so we don't have numbers for you. We have the number, I believe it was 165
For a new one.
to replace it.
So once you have the numbers, you'll
Yeah, we'll bring them forward and
give us
hopefully.
a call, yeah.
Because, I mean, we really like to get that back. It's, thank you.
Thanks.
Municipal facilities, you won't see many changes. Again, in the upper line, there's a very slight bump in salary seasonal. And basically, that's Varney. We had a very rough year last year at Varney. It's a very well-used beach, as you know. It was closed quite a bit because of some geese. So we're looking at ways to minimize that, as well as man it so that we can give it the proper hours and keep it up. But as I said, you can see it's very slight. It's not much at all. Pretty much all the other line items stay the same. We have some equipment getting older in playgrounds, although we are starting to change some, so we bumped that by 5,000. The only other one is if you look at equipment repair, you'll see that that's been climbing rapidly, and so we want to bring that number up. Miller Brothers, who is the people that manage the solar, they have a 2.5% increase each year, and that's within that number as well. And then we switched mechanical contractors. We went from JCI to BCM, and so that contract's in here as well. And now that we're basically fully DDC controlled, there's a little more maintenance to that has to be done as well. And then office supplies, I failed to mention that in all of them. Basically, you'll see little ticks. What has happened is we finally have every division paying for the one big copy that we have that does pretty much everything, faxes, copies. So we broke it out so everyone's paying it off. Solid waste.
Solid waste.
Solid waste is not much to say. The salary's for one person, and that's just the small hit. And then the numbers you're looking at, the Covanta increase, and we have contracts now in place for both of them, recycling and solid waste. So we're in good shape. And that's it. We didn't beat you, Pete.
But yeah, well, don't go anywhere, because we also got,
I know.
so if there are no questions, we'll move right along to the presentation discussion of warrant article number 11, which is sewer pump station upgrades.
Yep, it'll be for upgrades, it's $180,000 for upgrades to 2 pump stations, the one on Myland Ave and the one on Weston Ave, up by Technology Drive and kind of North Chelmsford there. Weston Ave is gonna be kind of the beginnings of a permanent building, that doesn't have an enclosure like the newer pump stations and like ones we've rehabbed recently, like Progress Ave, if you remember from a couple of years ago, that is now complete. And Myland Ave is a lot of electrical upgrades, things like that. Just, and it's all part of kind of, Mike Vosnak, as a sewer superintendent, had a capital plan done by Weston and Sampson, looking out over like a 10, 20-year period, so we're just kind of plugging away at that. This was originally in the capital outlay line in the sewer budget, but we decided to pull it out because the sewer reserve is starting to kind of tick a little bit, and we always like to kind of float that, you know, a little bit over $1 million, so it was the decision with talks with the town manager to fund this out of the reserve.
Perfect. Any questions? All right, and finally, last but not least, presentation discussion of warrant article number 31, street acceptances.
Yep.
It's pretty simple.
It's pretty simple, and again, if you remember last year, it's kind of the process we're gonna undertake under like the 5-year deal to kind of just check the boxes on roads that have been in town, and when I read the list here, you're gonna kind of stare at the front, you know, Robin Hill Road, Lock Road, Elm Street, Hunt Road, Park Road, Parker Road. For whatever reason, 100 years ago, or whatever it was, they didn't check a box, they didn't follow the last step of the process. So the gist of it is, they're not accepted at the state level, or listed as an accepted town road, so they don't count towards that Chapter 90 allotment, so we're basically shorting ourselves money. So over the next couple of years, we'll try to pick them all off, and at the end of the day, it'll, you know, should equal out to almost 100 grand.
Wow.
We've been, you know.
Yeah. How many miles are we adding this go around?
This should add about a little more than 5 miles.
Okay.
And we're running, you know, when you do the math, it's somewhere around $7,000 a mile. So,
Now, why haven't we done all of them all at once?
I mean, these are long, so it's a lot of work. And we're kind of picking off, last year, we just kind of grabbed a couple of easy ones because we decided to do it in January, so we had a real accelerated timeline. These are long, like Robin Hill Road's a 1.5 miles long, you know, so he started, Scott, my office, started working on them back in the fall, kind of once we get sort of out of construction season, and he started plugging away and putting that together, all the, you know, resident information, street information to compile descriptions for the streets and things like that. That way we can, you know, it'll be on file at the clerk's office, you know, once I go through
Yeah.
all the steps, which start Monday night at the selectmen, you know, and ends at town meeting. But then once that's done, I file them, it's just a couple of forms I fill out, send them to DOT, they check their box, and it just runs into the formula.
And what is required for that street to be accepted besides just filling out the forms?
With the state?
Yeah, the
It's
state.
just filling out the forms.
Okay.
And then, basically, you have a form that has the road information, you know, width, length, nearest cross streets, you know, elevation, sidewalks, curbs, things like that. And then I just need like a certification from the town clerk.
Okay. Do any improvements need to be made along the way? These are all been
No, I mean,
kept up by the town.
Quite honestly, we just paved Lock Road last year. So.
Yeah. So we should probably be getting the money for it back, yeah.
I mean, when you look at it, we've done, you know, Elm Street, we've done half of Park Road in the last couple of years. So, I mean, we're using Chapter 90 funds on these roads because they're eligible, but it's just, we're not, you know, they're not counting into our full allotment of money that we get
How
back.
many more do you think we have?
I believe the total number a year ago was 50-something but a lot of them are like
You gave us a long list
tiny,
last
little-
year.
yeah, with the tiny little streets, you know, little cul-de-sacs, like we did a couple, like Home Street up in North Chelmsford, it's like 150 yards long, you know? So it's just little ones, and again, who knows what happened when they were built, why it never, you know, some of them, we can find some paperwork, but it never went through the proper steps, you know, or never got a town meeting vote, so I can't prove that it, you know, so it's just.
Yeah. You have a development that was done years and years ago, and they never came back
Yep.
after they were done building it because they went on to something else.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, is there a process so we don't, for new development, that this doesn't
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
through?
Yeah, I actually was gonna have a 7th road on here, but they haven't completed, all their proper action, and current new subdivisions, the town holds a bond surety, basically, so we can, if the developer skips town, we can then seize that. I've done it on a couple in my time here. We can go back and finish the road, and then I can do the process,
Okay.
so. Any new, not that there's a whole lot of new subdivisions happening, but we have recourse.
These are old ones that we're refining that just aren't.
No, I know,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember, but I was just wondering from a, going
Yeah,
forward,
anything
so we're
new,
not
yep,
behind.
yep.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, gentlemen.
Okay.
That was pretty quick. I
That
mean,
was pretty quick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is presentation discussion of FY19 Chelmsford Public Schools budget with Dr. Lang and Ms. Joanna Johnson-Collins.
We'd like to be as quick as the others, too.
Good evening, thanks for coming.
How are you?
It's quite the day, so we appreciate you coming in.
Crazy out there.
No jeans?
You know what, I was hungry, so I was gonna stay straight through, but then I ended up going home, I had a little bite to eat.
Thank you.
And I said I was already there, so I may as well throw some clothes on, so. But no, well, I guess no one's watching probably. They'll watch the tape later, but yeah, we're not gonna have school tomorrow, so we'll have another day off to get dug out. But the town DPW and custodians really worked hard today to get the schools all cleaned out, so those are in very good shape. It's
Good.
just the power that's kind of hurting us at this
Well,
point.
yeah, there's no control over that one, yeah.
Nothing you can do with that.
And the kids are going to school till July now?
Unfortunately, yeah, as of today, Friday the 29th is the last day for school, so we're totally out of,
29th of June.
yeah, totally out of days.
Oh, no.
Our brother will be thrilled.
And this is the
That's
year,
right.
this is the year we'll go back. Yeah, it's gonna be a long June. Gary assures us we'll have AC in the schools by then, and so there won't be any problems.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be a long year. And then we do, this is the first year we're going back before Labor Day, so it's gonna be kind of a tight summer. But I think by doing so, we'll pick up an extra week, so a year from now, people will be happy.
Yeah.
So we did email you out a copy of the budget, and Joanna brought some extra copies for you tonight, just so you could see that. Our timeline at the school department actually went fairly well this year, so
Yeah,
the
that's
school,
great.
yeah, just worked out. The school committee last Tuesday actually reviewed this budget. So they made one minor modification during the budget process. It was just $250. I didn't incorporate that into this yet.
Okay.
We will do that for town meeting, but we just last
That was a
week-
good adjustment.
It was certainly worthwhile, and it was significant for the group, and it didn't really hurt our budget, so that was good. So the budget document itself, just to walk you through, is similar from what we have adopted a couple of years ago. The first 20 or so pages kind of give a little narrative of the school district. You get a little bit of a look at how Chelmsford stacks up with other communities across the state, with the state average on spending, how it compares with our comparable districts that are determined by the Department of Education. Then the next section kind of goes into academically, how does Chelmsford stack up against state averages, and also our comparable districts in the state. You know, kind of the overall summary is financially, we're right about in the middle of the pack. So, you know, we're right at about, with our comparable districts, right in the middle as far as spending is concerned when it comes to net school spending and per pupil spending, things along those lines. When we look at some of the academic attainment of our students, we're actually at the top of our comparable districts, so we're very proud of that. Our staff and students work really hard during the course of the year, so. The budget on page 17 kind of then gets into the financial overview for the coming year. Our base budget for fiscal 18 that we're in right now is $57 million. And this budget for fiscal 19 increases by $2 million to $59 million. Some of the assumptions that are built into the budget is we don't have a lot of retirements this year. We only have 4 or 5 announced at this point. But we did already assume within the budget document savings for the new people coming in. And what we've typically been budgeting is a teacher will retire at top step 12. We've been averaging master step 3. That's the number that we've been actually utilizing for our budget book. So that savings has already been included. The salaries that are reflected in the staff salary book that crosswalk back to the main document do include all of the known steps and lane changes. So anyone who by contract was due a step increase, or if people have told us they have a master's degree now, but they're moving forward to CAGs or something like that, we've incorporated those salaries. The second bullet talks a little bit about special education tuition, and this is an account that can really fluctuate pretty heavily. This particular year coming up, we're only actually anticipating about a $50,000 increase in special ed out-of-district tuition placements. That does account for all the students we currently have in the school system, as well as an earmark for some students who are going through a process to try to determine placements. So that has all been incorporated. We did have a very expensive tuition actually move out of town, so that is why we're actually not going up as much as we usually do. And again, I've talked about how we typically do get new kids coming in that we can't account for. We actually had one that's leaving the district, so July we don't have to take that tuition. Last year's budget as well, when we were trying to put in a figure for circuit breaker, we were pretty conservative. And we budgeted $2.5 million, but based on our claims and the state's reimbursement rate, and actually it was only 65%, which was low, we still received $2.8 million. So technically, even in this year's budget, we were able to get an extra $300,000 of circuit breaker reimbursement to help with some of our special ed costs. So next year, we know that our claims will be approximately the same as the fiscal 17 claims were. We know that the state is probably not going to go below 65%. That's really one of the lowest reimbursement rates they've had. So we're comfortable increasing the 2.5 to 2.8 million. So when we get to the budget, I can show you where we've done that. But we've assumed that that higher reimbursement rate. Third bullet is our regular ed transportation, so our big bus contract. Is already under contract for next year. We know that's going up $88,000. So we've incorporated that cost into the budget. We do have now the next series of bullets. We've done some kind of repurposing of positions. So we're going to bring back a full-time curriculum coordinator for English. This is a position that had been, this is really a good move for us. A position that had been eliminated a few years back due to some budget reductions. But we're very happy. It really kind of speaks to our first goal of the district around academic achievement and support for our students. We're very happy about that.
This year's budget, you brought back the science coordinator. That's already in there,
Correct.
right? So you've already brought back 2 of them.
One left to go.
Oh, okay, so I was going to ask,
Yeah.
when is that next?
Well, we're chipping away at it. I think the budget itself, I'm very proud of it. It makes some incremental progress each year towards programming. This current year that we're in, the big budget adjustment was obviously the move to full day K and a lot of the work that we've done in the modular classrooms. We did bring back the science coordinator in the current year that we're in. And then next year, these are some of the changes. So we're hoping, year by year to continue to reinstate some of these positions.
Process.
So the one that's going to be still outstanding is the curriculum coordinator for world languages. And one of the things that we'll actually do before we recommend that be reinstated is take a look at possibly combining that position with our English language learner position. We don't really have a coordinator for that. And several districts in our area actually do have a coordinator for world language and English language learners. There's a little bit of overlap in some of the programming. So we'll look to that as our English language learner numbers are actually increasing.
Okay.
We have about ballpark 40 additional students to the district this year, whose first language and home language is not English, that we're educating in the schools. So that's significant to us. A second increase for us this year is, actually around English language learners. So at the, sorry about that. At the middle school level right now, We have one ELL teacher that splits between Parker and McCarthy. Each of our 4 elementary schools have one full-time dedicated body, and then the high school has a full-time dedicated body. And based on the service delivery that's required for the students, we really need a full-time person in each building. So the full-time person that's splitting right now will pick one of the 2 schools and become a full-time staff member there, and then we'll end up posting for an additional ELL position for the other school. And the third position is going back to having a full-time RN at the Parker Middle School.
Great.
So we had kind of done some modifications to staffing last year. We brought on a coordinator, more of an administrative nurse for the district. To be able to do that, we had to utilize some of the funding from the Parker nurse position. So at the Parker, they have had an RN and an LPN this year, but the RN has been a floating position, so we're going to go back to having it be a dedicated position. And then in the event of a nurse being out or someone needing to float, our supervisor or our administrative nurse will float out to the school. So I think financially, we're able to do it. It's going to provide better continuity and service for the kids in the school, so we're happy about that. But to be able to add those 3 positions, we're basically repurposing 3 existing positions we have. So the last bullet talks about at the McCarthy Middle School. Last year, we reduced a strand of 5th grade, so 2 teachers from the 5th grade teams. In class size, we're still able to have very comparable class sizes between McCarthy and Parker at 5th grade, so we're going to continue that. So those 5th graders obviously go up to 6th grade. They used to have 10 teachers, now they have 8, and so this will continue that trajectory.
Yeah, you discussed this last year when we were
We
reviewing
did.
the budget, yeah. It just makes sense because that same class is moving up.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So we're kind of accounting for that savings. Our class sizes are still going to be within our grade ranges of probably under 25 per section. The current 5th grade, because there was some concern about this, is about 22, 23 per class at both sections, so that's really good. So those obviously in 6th grade will stay the same. We're not going to see an abundance of new kids coming in for 6th grade. Our current 4th grade is a high level at the elementary level, so when they go up to 5th grade, only go into the 8 sections. Some of those classes will be 24, 25, but we'll still be under the 25 class limit. And that's actually the one kind of blip elementary school-wise, but it's still, in the long run, it really helps us to kind of have some symmetry between the 2 schools, which will open up some opportunities for us in the long run around programming. So it's definitely the way to go.
Especially if we ever combine the middle schools as
Yeah, there's a bunch of different, like, facility kind of options that come
Yeah.
into play. And just depending on eventually what happens with a school project, if we had to do a combination, if both schools have the same grade level configuration and number of rooms, it gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Would you consider doing a redistrict and repurposing like a Parker for,
That's a dirty word.
It's a very dirty word.
but doing like, 5th and 6th and then 7th and 8th at McCarthy?
Yeah.
Have you guys looked at that?
That's
Just-
not as dirty. So when you say redistricting, that would be like actually keeping both schools, both having 5th to 8th grade and recarving Chelmsford
No,
up.
yeah, no,
That's
no,
kind of
that's not what I
tough.
meant.
That's a
Yeah.
redistrict.
But if you, if they both had 8 sections, and again, we're gonna have to give it a year or 2 to see what happens with our larger project. But let's say that it's just not gonna advance and we have to kind of step back and come up with a plan B. Well, we wouldn't wanna then, just financially, go and invest in both middle schools to, kind of blow out and put in new science labs and things like that.
Yeah.
You might at that point wanna think about having, say, it has been talked about, like Parker being, say, 5th and 6th grade, McCarthy being 7th and 8th, doing something to update the science labs in the 7th and 8th grade, because that's when the kids do a lot more
Yep.
projects. This will allow us that flexibility, so in another 2 years' time, we'll be able to kind of remove that extra team out of McCarthy, still have comparable class enrollments between both schools, and again, where they both will have the same configuration, it would open up that possibility. Right, and we still have to do something with Parker because they have the modular classrooms there now, and they're always gonna need that extra space, but that'll be part of the
Yeah.
facilities planning.
Okay.
Yeah, that is, I mean, the question is those monitors, because they are in need. They're coming up to the point where they're gonna have to be addressed.
They are. The ones at McCarthy are actually slightly older and in a little bit rougher shape than
Yeah.
Parker's, but we're gonna be working on those in our long-term planning.
Gary, how did those look?
Well, we just did some work to the McCarthy one last year, so we did painting the outside. Parker needs a little bit of work. The thing that's gonna probably be the next item will be the heating and conditioning units on the roof. That's gonna be the issue.
Yeah, because these are a lot different than the ones we have, these more permanent structures we have that the benefits have been put in.
Yeah, but the older one is under the previous need, they're gonna need it.
Okay.
They're as old as the modular.
Oh, no, I know, yeah.
Summer 2000.
Thank you.
So those FTEs actually kind of net out. We added 3, we reduced 3. So when you turn to page 18, if you looked overall, like our total full position equivalents in the district, you'll see it's going up by 2. These are the 2 that it's going up by. So we're going to begin to introduce elementary assistant principals to the buildings. This has been something, again, we've talked about for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
3 of our elementary schools are at or over 500 students at this point. It's really unheard of to only have a single administrator in a building of that size. Would love to be able to add a full-time person in each building, but again, we're doing this in stages. So this year, we're going to be implementing a half-time assistant principal in each of the 4 buildings. It'll be 2 full-time bodies, because you wouldn't hire someone just to be half-time. So we'll hire 2 people. We don't know yet which schools are gonna kind of share, or what that model will look like, but basically, we'll have 2 full-time bodies to share between the schools. And my hope would be a year from now to be able to come back and add another 2, and then we would have 1 per building. But that is an add that we've incorporated within this particular budget document. Then the second bullet on page 18 talks a little bit about our second goal. So our first goal in our strategic plan for the district is all around our academic programming. And our second goal is more around student social emotional wellness and well-being. And these bullets actually speak to that a little bit. One of the things that we have been spending a lot of time on in the schools is MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support for students, and then SEL, social emotional learning. We've incorporated funding in here to be able to stipend some of our current staff members. So this isn't adding new staff, but just a stipend to have some team leaders in each of the buildings take charge of some of the professional development and training around social emotional learning within the schools. We also, again, at the elementary level, added the extra kindergarten classrooms, and we've had a few extra classrooms just be added over the years to deal with some of the enrollment in the schools. We had purchased Second Step as a curriculum some years ago, but we need some additional kits to replenish, as well as for those new kindergarten classrooms, we need to add some additional SEL kits, so that has been included within this budget. The other big one, that should be an indented bullet under the second one up from the bottom. I'll fix that in the final printing. But we have therapeutic behavioral programming at the middle school and the high school level in the district, and the one level we don't is at the elementary. So again, this has been discussed for quite some time. When we have students that present with different behavioral or challenges, or who need more of a therapeutic setting, we obviously work with them as much as we can within our schools, but oftentimes we then, if we can't provide the necessary programming for them, they would be candidates to go to, say, like a Valley Collaborative or a Crest Collaborative for that next layer of programming. So this is going to allow us to actually open up some programming within our own district to hopefully be able to better service those students, keep them in district before having them go out to a collaborative. And again, where we have the programming at the middle and the high school level, if we're not losing them, say, 3rd, 4th grade, when a lot of times different issues will present, we have a far better chance of keeping them within the district as they go through middle school and high school. And then they're not looking at adding to our out-of-district placement budget. So that is incorporated, and part of the reason we're able to do that, we have had teams all fall, and they'll actually be reporting back towards the end of March, early April, taking a look at what the programming should look like in Chelmsford. Similar to, we have a program for students with autism at the Byam School. One of our 4 elementary schools, it won't be the Byam, obviously, because that's the program, they already have one there, but one of the other 3 schools will most likely house this therapeutic program. So that any of our elementary school students in the district would go to that school for the programming. It wouldn't be a program you'd replicate at each building, it would be too costly. And within the budget itself, we've earmarked right now $300,000 to be able to pay for the necessary either contracted services or staffing needs that are going to come from this. Part of the reason we're able to pay for this in this year's budget is that offset in the circuit breaker reimbursement. So the extra $300,000 we're getting this year that wasn't earmarked obviously is able to help us with this. And by increasing our circuit breaker line item from the 2.5 to 2.8 last year, that gave us a little bit of savings. So that's really significant. We're very excited about being able to do that. And then the last bullet just talks about how this budget does continue to utilize circuit breaker, school choice, and then that Valley Collaborative reimbursement. We'll talk a little bit about that now and then later for the second article within the budget. So the formatting of the document itself remained the same. Page 19 is your summary level totals, and again, these crosswalk to the DOE chart of accounts that we have to report on. And then behind each of them, starting on page 20, is the breakdown. The top section is always the personnel section, the bottom section is the non-personnel, and then you get a bottom line, line item, say, on page 20 of 27,120, which ties out to your summary level totals.
And we've got 2 years of actuals in there.
Yeah, so you have 2 years of actuals.
That's
and then-
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, welcome. 2 years of actuals, a current year budget, and then a recommended budget for the following year. So, and as Joanna and I talked a little about this, we're very comfortable putting the 16 and 17 in, because we actually kind of created those budgets, managed them. We're the ones that worked with the auditors to have those audited. Next year, we can add a third year. I don't know that I'd go beyond 3 years of actuals,
don't need
but, we do have the 2 this year. We only had the 1 last year, and I know that was a question.
Yep.
We didn't want to go back and recreate the prior year, but now you do have the 2 years of actuals.
That's great, thank you.
And, again, it carries right through all of your different, different pages. And, again, when you jump in, just for argument's sake, on page 56, and you know how this works from watching in the past, but for the new member, our staff salary book crosswalks out to the main document, so you can actually see the person we're talking about, the position, and then the salary, and it ties back as you go through. So that's, again, just kind of more, hopefully, making it a little bit more readable and easy to understand, from just a kind of layperson within the town, even wanting to look at our budget and see how we're spending our money.
So when would a hiring happen for these new positions?
Well, now that the school committee did approve the budget last week as well, we'll be, usually by about March 15th, so the end of next week, we'll do our first round for all of our teacher hiring. And then these new positions will follow probably a week later. So a lot of these will be advertised between now and then April school vacation week.
Okay.
And towards the end of April, they should be finalized. And right around May 1st is when we would actually make appointments, have a little bit of transition time, and then people would officially come on board July 1st.
Excellent.
This is right at the peak of the, coming into the peak of the hiring season.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, we're excited about that. And actually, I was very happy that we didn't get snowed out school committee-wise, because that was what kind of set us back a little bit last year.
It did, it set us back too.
Yeah, but no, so we're in good shape on that front.
Great.
So Joanne and I are certainly happy to answer any questions you have about either individual line items of the budget, or I can point out, like, because I know people are curious, say like page 54 is that special ed page where it has the tuitions and it has the different set-asides and things. One of the things, again, in the budget as you go through, we tried to include a little note section. So if there's something that's like new, or there's an account that really kind of goes up over any kind of a normal just increase, we try to put a little note in there for people to watch. But you can see, like on the circuit breaker fund last year, we had budgeted $2.5 million coming in, and again, what you'll end up seeing is your actual this year being closer to 2.8 when the actual gets printed, but we're carrying that 2.8 next year, and that actually allowed us an extra $300,000 within the budget to be able to make some of these moves.
Or that new
That therapeutic program.
therapy program.
Yeah. We're again going to estimate taking in about 50 kids from neighboring districts through the school choice program.
Okay.
And they each come with a $5,000 tuition, so we're including the $250,000 offset on this page of the budget as well.
Okay.
We have to do it somewhere, and it's just easier to do it in a page that has some big accounts.
It makes
to be able
sense,
to take
yeah.
the offset on, and it's just cleaner year over year, being able to see it within one area of the budget as opposed to multiple.
Yeah.
And then on this particular page too, this is where that Valley Collaborative tuition credit comes in. So the current year that we're in now, Valley is obviously our member collaborative, so that's the collaborative that we do most of our programming at. We obviously have students at other collaboratives if the program meets their need better, but most of our students do go to Valley. Valley is doing very well financially, and at the end of the year, Chris Scott, the executive director, has really turned that place around, and they're doing very well. They can only retain so much money on their balance sheet at the end of the year. I forget the exact percentage. But whatever they have in excess of that has to be sent back to the member districts. And it's all sent back in proportion to what you actually paid. So when we were putting the budget together last year, and Joanna, do you remember the number?
I want to say like 442.
Okay. We had anticipated we were gonna be getting back about, say, 442. We built in half of that money to go toward the budget itself, and then we were gonna try to save half of that money. And start to, we talked about kind of that special ed reserve that we're trying to build through circuit breaker. We ended up actually getting, instead of the 440, 5.25 is gonna come to
Really?
us, because the return was greater than they even thought at the end of the year.
Wow.
So, can we just talk about this all at the same time?
Yeah,
Or-
sure, okay.
I don't know
And
if-
including the presentation discussion of warrant article number 8, the special education reserve.
Because it all
fund.
kind of ties in together.
Yeah, that's fine.
So what ended up happening is, the only place that the school committee can really account for any savings in special education is through the circuit breaker fund. Paul had reached out earlier in the fall to talk about the Municipal Modernization Act and how there was now the ability for towns to be able to set up a reserve fund. So we would like to do that. The school committee has voted in favor of doing it. The Board of Selectmen has voted in favor of doing it. It now needs to go to town meeting to have the reserve fund set up, and then to accept the deposit into the fund. And once money is in the fund, it can be utilized in the following fiscal year. So if we put money in the fund now, we wouldn't be able to access it until fiscal 19. We were originally gonna be talking about putting in, say, $200,000 into that particular fund. I do not have the exact bottom line yet. What I'm hoping to be able to do and recommend, and we should know this, I just want to look at the third quarter financials.
Okay.
I think what we're going to recommend doing is actually taking all of the money that came in, the 5.25, and putting it into the fund. For a couple of different reasons. Number one, again, our fiscal 18 budget is in very good shape. We've got some accounts that have surpluses in them, so at year end, I'm not going to need to take that as an offset in our particular budget. The other issue that we have is I like to be able to both budget and show, as far as the history goes, numbers as cleanly as we possibly can. So if the school system were to only take, say, $200,000 of the 5.25 coming back, we would technically have, the only other way to do it is to have them give us a credit on our tuition bills at Valley of the other, say, $300,000. It's legal and it can be done, but what it does is on our actuals, it looks like little spikes. So spikes in revenue and expenditures, and it's very odd to track over time. And people already have a hard enough time tracking our special ed funds and things like that.
Really?
Yes, well, even the people who do it. It's even worse if you don't follow it. So what I would like to do, we have talked for a few years about trying to get to $1.5 million is the number that I think we should have set aside in a special ed fund.
Okay.
To me, it doesn't really matter if it's in the new special fund or if it's in circuit breaker, as long as we can access it if we have to. Once the money goes into the fund, if we needed to access it to pay for special education tuition, the school committee and the Board of Selectmen would need to vote at that point to allow the expenditure. I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't if there was a true cost that was put before them. That doesn't have to then wait to go to town meeting. And I would like to keep the transactions clean coming from Valley. So again, where we have the extra circuit breaker money coming in this year, and our budget's in very good shape. I just want to look at the financials at the end of the third quarter, but I believe what I'm going to recommend to you, and then also to the school committee and Paul, as we work on the language for the vote, is to take the 100% of the check from Valley as a check, not as a credit, and put it in that fund. And then utilize that $500,000 toward that 1.5 that we're going to try to save. The way the legislation works, right now, I believe when I ran the numbers, because you're limited to a certain percentage you can put in there.
Yeah.
It's about $1.4 million, I want to say. We don't have to worry about it for another year or two. We wouldn't hit the cap. But I would just like to see the whole fund go there, if we can. And again, I have every reason to believe we'll be able to do that. I just want one more look at the third quarter financials, just to make sure our projections hold. But that would be the rationale for doing that. You know, worst case scenario, I would just have to utilize more circuit breaker and, less on
Unless the
that
reserve
front.
fund, yeah.
But again, as long as it's going for special education set aside, I'm not that concerned with that. And I'm still within the allowable carryover for circuit breaker. But I just also, on page 54, wanted to kind of show you how we're showing those reimbursements coming in, or those set-asides.
So I'm sorry, you said what percentage is allowed to be in that reserve fund? You're not sure?
Paul, do you remember?
Is it 2%?
Do you remember the percentage that you can put aside in that reserve fund? It was a percentage, the new fund, Right. It was like, was it a percentage of your base? Was it like 2% of your base or something?
Because 1.4 would be 2%.
Yeah, I think it might be 2%.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense then, that was the 1.4.
And that's why I had slightly under $1.5 million in my mind.
Well, yeah, 'cause,
So that's probably
I
it.
mean, going forward, we'll
Right.
probably
It could.
probably gonna hit it, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
But we don't have to worry about it because we wouldn't be there this year.
With the 520, well, we think. We'll know after the third quarter.
No, I'd love to be able to just take the whole amount.
525, yeah.
Right.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, I stepped on your toes there.
That's all right. This might tie into your spiking of in and outs, but the school choice in the Valley, where are those in 16 and 17? Are they somewhere else, another line item?
They were never included, well, the Valley, this is the first time it's happened.
Okay.
So it hasn't happened before. Valley was kind of in a recovery phase, and up until this year, fiscal 18, this is the first year we're getting that reimbursement back.
Okay.
The school choice offset was never actually shown in the budget as an offset. The school committee has a revolving fund for school choice, and that's in one of your appendices.
Okay.
It had never been earmarked toward the general fund budget. And what we did last year was actually earmark a piece of it, $250,000 toward the fund. But that was the first time that had happened.
Mhm.
It's technically a discretionary fund for the school committee, and they can vote to move the money out of the revolving fund and basically utilize it for any educational purpose.
Okay, thanks.
So, I did see the school committee meeting where you went page for page, line item by line item.
We did.
Yeah, and for the most part, it was supported completely and unanimously by the entire school committee, so there weren't anything, it wasn't really a whole lot that jumped out as being an issue. This is a very well put together budget, and it meets the recommendation of the town manager, so I mean, I really don't have any questions about it.
No, thank you, and I mean, this goes without saying, Paul's been great to work with. It allows us to accomplish our goals for the year and keep on track. And again, I think it shows steady, progress
And
towards.
you've been hitting that wish list we talked about a couple of years
We
ago.
have, yeah, we have.
So, excellent. Especially the huge one last year, yeah.
Yeah, the full vacay was huge. It's gone
It's a
off.
big wish list item.
Gone off seamlessly, but no, that's been great. No, as you read through this too, because I know it's probably the first time you've seen it, if you have a question, you want to ask ahead of time, or just call, set up a time to come in, I'm more than happy to talk about it. And, yeah, if you have any ideas of things you'd like to see in the future too, I mean, I'm always open. At the end of the budget, just so you know, after the staff salary book, we did include a couple of new sections this year. So Appendix A on page 72, Joanna just put together a listing of the different grants that the school department receives that technically support our, because this will come up once in a while, they support our mission and our goals, but they're not actually included within the operating budget. So again, it's just a little bit of information about each of the grants, whether the federal, state, the various dollar amounts that are coming in and how it's being utilized, and just a little kind of blurb about what the grant actually is intended for. Because again, I think sometimes we lose track of all the extra resources that are really benefiting the schools as well. And then Appendix B, page 75, this is a report that we give to the school committee quite frequently, but again, it's just a listing of all of our revolving funds and fund balances that again support the schools. So just wanted to kind of have this all contained within one document. We thought that'd be helpful. This is where you would see, what's the fund you were just talking about? School choice, the fund 510. Has about $1 million, just shy of $1 million in money that has accumulated over the years in that particular fund. And then lastly,
Talk about the two, sorry,
Yeah.
while we're there.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the two deficits on those line items, the gifts and donations and the summer school?
yeah, I'll ask Joanna too, if you don't mind. Those are just deficits within the current year, not in the overall fund balance.
Okay.
It's just based on a projection for this year, but.
Right, and we never know what gifts and donations are gonna come in,
Mm-hmm.
so we really don't, make a big forecast on that.
Yeah, that's it.
And we just start kind of chipping away a little bit at the balance from the end of 17, the beginning of 17. So we'll still have 15,693 left.
Yep.
And then summer school, We did, in the current fiscal year, go over a little bit and ate into the balance a little bit from the prior year, but we'll still have a little fund left. That's 6493 when we're done.
And about when do you know when you have the setups? Because I mean, it's a stab in the dark, really, with summer school as to what we're going to need for the.
Right, and actually, Dr. Hirsch is going to change it a little bit for
Okay.
next year and possibly do online things like that, and
okay.
not have the type of program that's been in the past.
Interesting. All right. Okay.
I have a question about, I mean, the balance is 0 all across, but musical instrument repair?
Yeah, I just left that on there. It was a fund that must have been voted in years and years ago, and it was established, but there hasn't been any activity in it for years.
Okay. Does the Friends of Music take care of most of this?
No, the school budget does, the local budget does have a budget for music, so it's, most of it's probably out of that. but
Okay,
then
so it's
that-
It's a
absorbed
separate
through there.
revolving fund that
Okay.
used to be.
For whatever reason, yeah, this is just, we inherited this. This was just a fund that must have
Alright,
been established in the
that's-
past.
Mhm.
It just hasn't been used in years. But instead of deleting it off the sheet, we just left it on the sheet.
All right,
Friends of Music contributes a lot of money.
I know I do.
And then we also, within the local, as Joanna was saying, the local school accounts, we do pay for repairs as they go.
Yep.
So. And then last, because this actually came up, I think, at one of the town meetings, people were just asking about student enrollment information. So I'm getting smart, you know, when people ask me questions, I
question's going to have the answers for next time
I think about putting it right in the document. So we have that in there. Just every October 1 is basically what our Chapter 70 and foundation budget is predicated upon. So we just included this as a section right in the back of the budget book. It just goes school by school and, which kind of shows how many home rooms we have. This is where you'd see the, say McCarthy last year, how we ended up in 5th grade on page 80. How we ended up dropping from the 8 sections to the 10, but still your class sizes were, between both schools, 22, 23 kids per class.
Wow. Byam's got a lot of kindergartners.
Yes, they do. Byam actually is the registration. This is what was tough because we've always been able to kind of better predict first grade because at least we have the halftime kids coming in. So this was a little bit tricky for us. But as the registration season was rolling out last year, Byam was just getting hit. And again, it's something where we don't have centralized enrollment and you enroll based on where you live. We need to accommodate the students at their home school.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to add a fifth teacher for Byam because you don't want your kindergarten numbers to be over
Yeah.
25. You want those to be as low as you possibly can. So that's why you'll see down below, we did add a 5th section for Byam. So now by doing that, that 5th section will kind of roll. So they'll always have that little bubble going through the school. And you can see like right now, Byam actually in a number of years, particularly when the additional housing developments open up out that way, could very well become a 5-strand school instead of a 4 across all grade levels. Like this year, they have a 5th section of 4th grade, obviously that's gonna cycle out when the bubble ends. And we've gotta figure out, that's the kind of the one FTE in the budget that's not fully accounted for at this point. They may need it, based on enrollment, like one of the things that I'd wanna do is, again, take a look at their kindergarten registrations from this year, where they had so many last year. Would we ever have to cycle that, because I'm only budgeting for 4 right now, so we would need to cycle that extra teacher down to K to open up a 5th section.
Yeah.
Well, what we've done in the past is, let's say it wasn't needed to buy them, but, Harrington or Center ends up with a really high number of enrollees for kindergarten, we could float the position there. But typically, once you start a bubble, it sees its way through the whole section, so it'll be interesting.
That's a tough one to chart for because it's the first time they're seeing the system.
Yeah, the Ks are tough.
Yeah.
The Ks are tough.
I know the parents in our area, I live almost, I can walk to Byam School. They were very concerned when the new projects were, were announced, so,
I know.
because of school potential
tracking it.
overcrowding.
No, we're tracking it.
Okay.
And, You know, there's another development that's actually, we've been getting a lot of, we're kind of keeping an eye on. It's kind of down near the end of Mill Road, or Mill and Turnpike,
Right.
down that way, which I believe technically, it's not open yet, so it's not a concern right now, but technically feeds Center, and if you look at Center's numbers are jumping up quite a bit. We could potentially have to look at a situation when the development comes online, of we have extra capacity at South Row, and obviously, that's not far from
No.
the Turnpike
No.
and Mill. We could technically have the school committee vote to kind of accept them into a different school as a whole kind of project. So we wouldn't just handpick students, but we would just say anyone at this particular address or this complex is technically going to be districted to South Row as opposed to Center.
That's interesting.
Kind of, let them still keep their sense of community.
Yeah.
Where they don't have one now, they don't feel a loss. And busing and transportation-wise, it's easy enough to have a
One
bus
stop,
stop there, pick them up and go. So something like that, may have to happen out in the Byam area as the different developments open up. If we can't accommodate them all there, we may have to look at another school, because I'd hate to do like a real redistricting, because that really does offset the
Oh,
balance of
yeah.
everyone. But to potentially take a complex and redistrict it to a different zone.
Interesting.
But it's a discussion for years to come, but I do know that people are concerned, so we're watching it. And then,
That's why we're addressing, well, that's one of the reasons why we're addressing the school projects.
correct. And if you flip to page 80, that just kind of shows you your two middle schools, but it gives you a good look at, like what happened this year in 5th grade at McCarthy and Parker. And how,
Yeah.
they're only off by 3 kids between the 2 schools. And if we hadn't made that reduction and left 10 sections there, you would have had 18 kids in a class at McCarthy and, 22 or 23 at Parker, which is an equity issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want the lowest numbers we can, but at the same time, you don't want to see disparaging numbers between grades.
No, they're
And
very
by-
close, yeah.
Yeah, by doing the 8, they're only off by a couple of kids. And, a middle schools being in the low 20s is, super desirable. I really want to have the best class sizes at the elementary level, and then we can afford to have a little bit higher at the middle, and then a little bit higher at the high school. And we kind of have the reverse in the district. We have the lowest numbers at the high school, then, these middle school numbers are very envious, and then at the elementary school, we have very good numbers, but I want to keep putting that push on to have the numbers at the lower levels be the smallest. But again, a few people had asked for this, and we figured let's just bake it right into the document, and even for historical purposes, it'll be there.
Now, where are we are we up or down? Well, I think we're up because of the full-day K, right?
Yeah, overall number-wise, I don't have it off the top of my head because I don't have last year's. We're comparable.
You know, if I'm asking, someone else is gonna ask at town meeting.
I'll have it prepared that night. I'll have it that night for you.
Yeah,
I'll
'cause
find it out tonight and I'll email it to you.
That's fantastic, thank you. Yeah, because we had that same question when it comes to Neshoba as well, so. Because I know the numbers are up again, as far as enrollment from Chelmsford, so. And the overall numbers, I think, are down again, so.
So I will find out and get you the exact.
That'd be fantastic. Does anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you both very much.
All right. And I'll coordinate with Paul on the vote for the fund, for that special fund,
Yes.
just the dollar amount as we get a little bit closer.
That'd be great.
But conceptually, the school committee is on board, and I think it's the way to go.
You said you probably wouldn't have that until April.
Yeah, I'm thinking if we can just get like one more look of the numbers in early April, end of the first week in April, something like that.
So we
should
would
be able to do that.
probably do, because we vote in March. So what we would probably
Okay.
do is vote support of, but not the number.
Not the number.
And then we can either have a quick meeting just to vote the number, or even not have a recommendation, just a recommendation to
Yeah.
establish the fund.
Yeah.
And then what goes into it, we don't really have to vote on that, so.
Right.
Because we'll,
Yeah, if you could-
if all goes as planned, which is why we're here tonight.
Right.
We plan on voting on the 22nd of
Okay.
March, so.
I think the key is to just be in favor of the fund
Yeah,
establishment
I
itself,
agree, yeah.
because then every year there might be different votes of the
course.
money going in.
Going in.
So that'd be great. Okay, thank you very much. All right, you too.
This has been a banner year so far. We're gonna kick ourselves near the end, though. Next on the agenda, we have a discussion of the budget hearing and warrant article schedule. So we've been tracking right along. We've been having relatively speedy meetings. I think all of our side liaison trips have been rather successful this year, so there hasn't been a real issue with changes, not to mention the fact that the budget has been in good form, so there haven't been a lot of question marks, and not a whole lot of warrant articles that have popped up that are really contentious. So, as you can see, the ones in bold we've done tonight, and we knocked out a whole bunch, so really all we have left for hearings is next week with Neshoba Valley School District coming in. We have, Paul, you're gonna give us a quick update on the Forum Enterprise Fund and budget next week. And then we have the 3 citizen petitions, the zoning bylaw amendment, the conflict bylaw amendment, and the 101 Mill Road proposition. So as far as that's concerned, after that, we should be able to go to vote the week after. Like I said, we talked about the planning board. I know, and I think, Glenn, we talked about this last week. The planning board hasn't really voted on what they're doing with their article yet, so we may not get a chance for them to come in to discuss it, and we may have to just go voting on that, because we don't have a real sense of what's going on for it. But that hits everything else. I did reach out to the Robertsfield Playground Committee, Robertsfield Committee, after a meeting last week. Actually, we were reached out to, and having a discussion about the funding, as was in the minutes, and what their plans are as far as the fundraising is concerned and where they are currently. And I offered an extended invitation for them to come in and give us an update as to how the fundraising is going and where they are so far. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it tonight, and they can't make it next week. They asked if they could come in on the 22nd. That's our voting night, but I don't see a problem with having a quick presentation that evening, if everyone's okay with that.
Yeah.
So I'll reach back out to Bill Askenberg and tell him that that's fine. He can come in. We can have a discussion just briefly about where they are as far as fundraising, what they're doing, and what their plans are with any agreement that they might be making with the town as far as any reimbursement for the funds that we approved at town meeting in the fall. So I think that'd be helpful, and it'd help clarify a little bit our discussion we had last week when that came up during the CPF discussion. That's where we are. We're tracking well. If there's no further discussion, any old business? None. New business? None. Any public comment?
4974 was last year's enrollment.
4974? All right, thank you very much.
So it looks like it's within 20 kids.
Within 20? Okay, perfect. Okay, so it takes care of new business. Unless there's anything else? All right, no public comment or press questions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
See you next week. Stay warm.